I was standing by my window one cold and cloudy day when I saw the hearse come rolling for to carry my mother away. Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. Howdy, and welcome home. This is Mountain Home, and I'm Jerrel. This is a place where we can talk about music, the mountains, and everything in between. I'm glad you're here. I want to share something with you. This is something I won in an auction recently. It is from RBI. It is labeled as the Chromalin. It is a form of Autoharp that is similar to the Guitaro from Oscar Schmidt. Now, Oscar Schmidt and RBI were competitors. I don't believe RBI is around anymore, not from what I've seen. But in general, they would compete with each other over the decades. And this is one such instrument that was meant to compete with the Guitaro. Now, the Guitaro looks extremely similar. Functionally, it's basically the same instrument. This is a form of Autoharp. Now, you might be wondering, what is the difference between this and a standard Autoharp? And what is the point of this instrument? Well, to keep it short and simple, this is not a good instrument. This is the worst possible variation of Autoharp that you can play. An Autoharp generally is designed for you to be able to depress on a key and to pick and to have all of the tones in a chord represented there for you. So if I hold down the button that is labeled G major, I'll get a G chord. Now, the strength of an Autoharp is that it is a highly dexterous instrument. The Autoharp has high dexterity, and so you are meant to use finger picks thusly. And on a standard Autoharp, you can use a variety of finger picking patterns of pinches, but on this instrument that doesn't work. And I'll show you what happens if a person who is experienced with the Autoharp, if they try to pick up one of these. This is the chromolin or a Guitaro. It's going to be the same thing. This is the sound you'll get. It's quite dull, and there are a high number of miss strokes where I'm hitting a string that is muted. Why is this happening, and why does this generally not happen on a typical Autoharp? The number of strings is significantly less, meaning the sonic presence on this is much more shallow. I'm going to now refer to this instrument as a strumming Autoharp, and the reason I will do that is because this instrument is designed specifically for strumming. It works best when you strum, and with a typical standard Autoharp you have 4 registers, and if you strike within those registers you will basically always hit a string as long as you strike within those registers. This, however, doesn't actually have multiple registers because the tonal distribution is so shallow and uneven that if you try to play this the same way that you would a typical Autoharp, you're going to get a lot of missed strikes, and it results in a very clattery, unpleasant sound. So when I first got this instrument, I did not like it at all, and I still don't like it very much. It is an interesting instrument. It's a part of our history, but there's a very good reason why the strumming Autoharp did not become prominent, why it was not popular, why it was not successful. Now, what is the point of a strumming Autoharp? An Autoharp itself, people say, oh, it's easy. Of course it's easy to depress a button, but having the dexterity to perform complex picking patterns and pinches and identifying and recalling through muscle memory where exactly you need to strike during certain chords, that is something that takes more skill. And that is something that can be difficult for people to do when they are first starting out on Autoharp, or maybe they just have a tough time playing the Autoharp in that way. This allows players to get the Autoharp sound without having to play in that finger picking style. If you strum a typical Autoharp, it's too noisy because you will be hitting a lot of strings, and it's so messy having all of those vibrations resonate that single resonating surface. And there's crosstalk between the strings, and if anything is slightly out of tune, you're going to get dissonance. And so it's a situation where strumming on an Autoharp does not work, but strumming on this variation of Autoharp, which has a more shallow, more narrow sonic distribution, it does actually work. So strumming is how this instrument was meant to be played. So in essence, the strumming Autoharp was designed for chord bashing. It's a much easier way to play the Autoharp, but it doesn't sound good. It has a very shallow sound, and the chords that are present on these, there are 15 chords here. If you're missing an E major or an E minor, the number of songs that you can play is significantly reduced. We have things like an E flat major and B flat major. Those are very uncommon in modern music. In older folk tunes, you would have found those chords, but you can modify the chord bars here. There's felt on the inside of these. On my other Autoharps, I modify them so I have an E major and a B major in there, so I have access to more tunes that I can play. So this is so fascinating, but it sucks. It really sucks. The number of tones present in a chord that build up the chordic data, they range from 6 to 8. Maybe there's other chords that have more than 8, but if you were to hold down one of these and then just go through it and count, there are only 6 strings resonating, sometimes 7, sometimes 8, depending on the chord, but those are the only ones forming the chordic data, which means you have almost the same distribution as a typical 6-string guitar. And a 6-string guitar gives you more freedom of performance because there is absolutely no room for ornamentation. What do I mean by ornamentation? Ornamentation is part of your performance, whether that you are on a fretless instrument. You can glissando, you can pull off, you can hammer on, you can slide, you can vibrato a note, you can bend a note. That is ornamentation. On a fiddle, you can roll. And on this strumming Autoharp, there is none. Absolutely no ornamentation whatsoever. On a standard Autoharp where picking is appropriate, that is your ornamentation. You can't finger pick on this instrument. You have to strum, and it's shallow. So the chordic distribution is very shallow. It's a tinny sound, and here's another huge problem. So this instrument, an Autoharp player would not be mistaken in thinking that you should play an Autoharp upright. That is how Autoharps are designed to be played in the modern day. And if you try to do that, you'll find that there's no way to play this vertically. You cannot you cannot depress these buttons comfortably. So I spent an hour trying to play this way, and my hand was so very, very sore, and I determined this is not how this instrument was meant to be played. You cannot play this way. Partly what leads me to that conclusion is that on the second row of buttons, the actual chord labels are obfuscated. You are not able to see them. When I purchased this, the rear strap button was missing. Luckily, I had one in stock, so I placed one on there, and I will now put the strap onto the instrument. And if you try to wear it vertically, you'll have the same issue. You won't be able to see the button labels, the chord labels, and you cannot comfortably depress those buttons. You will hurt your wrist. And what I found is that the instrument sits very comfortably horizontally. And when the instrument is sitting horizontally, you can strum comfortably. When it is vertical, you don't really have full control moving your arm back and forth like this. That's not comfortable. It's not consistent. Whereas in this configuration, you use your elbow mainly to strum, which makes it similar to playing a guitar. This leads me to believe that this instrument was designed specifically to be played horizontally, also largely because in this configuration you are able to see all of the chord labels comfortably. Your left hand sits over the instrument, you can rest there, and this is quite comfortable. So this leads me to believe that the instrument is designed to be played in this manner. It's very difficult finding information on this instrument because it's extinct. They don't make these. It never became popular. There are very few resources about these instruments. So the Guitaro and the Chromalin, which I'm classifying as strumming Autoharps, are meant to be played horizontally. I'll show you the case. And the case makes me laugh. It has a little bit of a Looney Tunes effect to it because it is cut to the near exact shape of the instrument. And that's funny to me, how very, very specific the case is. So I'm so glad to have this in my collection because it is very rare. But I outside of a fun novelty, I cannot see myself bringing this to a jam. I would bring this to an on-stage performance where I am sharing rare instruments. Sometimes I will go on stage and share with the audience things from my collection that I find interesting, unique. Sometimes I'll share custom instruments, but in general when I'm on stage I prefer to share instruments that I didn't build, instruments that were made at least in some numbers so that there is some relevance to our history with instruments. This is something that I would share as a novelty, but playing in a jam, there's absolutely no reason at all why I would play this over a standard Autoharp, because with the standard Autoharp you have interesting finger picking patterns. You can have 21 chord configurations. This one only has 15, and there's really only as a novelty to show people something interesting, quirky, and fun would I ever play this instrument. Now you might be wondering how I muted those strings, because these strings will ring out. And if you'd like to mute your strings, depress F, C, and G. If you depress F, C, and G, you will mute your strings. Okay, so that is the Chromalin. It's a clone of the Guitaro, and it is a terrible, terrible instrument that I find interesting. Thanks very much for spending some time with me taking a look at this strumming Autoharp. If you are interested in learning the Autoharp, picking one up, developing your skills, please feel free to stick around and hang out with me. I've got a bunch of episodes here on the channel where I share some information about the Autoharp, and I'm creating more as well, but I also cover many interesting instruments, many of which I make myself. Take care of yourselves, everyone. Be well. I hope you'll come home again soon. I'll leave the porch light on for you.